Hi, this is Curt and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
Right, and so you fill the blank. I'm scratching my head still. So we are now talking about the IAFC, IAFC, Jesus, IAFF, the union, in case anyone doesn't know, the Union for the Paid Firefighters, who claims they represent, I think it was 85%, right? Protect 85% of the world.
Oh yeah. The population. No, the United States.
The United States. No, well, it's weird. They said and Canada and others or something like that.
Yeah, no,
line.
it's 85% of the population of the United States, but it's the IAFF.
Yeah, the IAFF, and they've sued NFPA. Full disclosure.
My former employer. I was a member of the IAFF for many years, and then so my former union is suing my former employer. You know.
Only we can do that. Listen, the short answer or the short description of this, I'll let you go more further, but is the IAFF argues that NFPA adopted a standard which required PFAS containing, right, these carcinogenic molecules, right, PFAS in any event, that is in the outer shell of our turnout gear. They said the NFPA adopted a standard requiring it, that this is so dangerous because it breaks down on our bodies, and alleges they're in cahoots with some manufacturers. I think.
Let me just clarify. It's the allegation is that it's on the moisture barrier. It's not on the outside.
Oh, okay.
It's not on the inside. It's on the moisture barrier. So that's important based on some of the allegations in the lawsuit. So just
because they say it breaks the PFAS down, right? And they said that, look, NFPA knew about this. And they even said that the President Biden, when he was at the Fire Academy, said, we're going to go after them. And they quote him saying it was in the gear. So people knew it was in the gear. I'm going to tell you something. I had no freaking clue this was in my gear. So if this suit wins, I'm going to go pick up about 500 of my clients. I'm not being kidding. And I'm going to have the same damn suit, right? If this is true, I'm going to be one of them.
No, don't be suing the NFPA.
Yeah. So in any event, that really is the short of the suit, right? You put in a standard which had a dangerous component, you knew it, and you ignored it, and you should have known it. I think they say they did know it, not even should have known. So if that's the suit, I think they have like a iceberg chance in hell of winning this, though. I'm not saying the attorneys didn't do a nice job in the pleading, but I'll pass this off to you. My thought is, how do you win on this?
Yeah, I think it's more of a symbolic lawsuit than one that's going to actually prevail. And I think the IAFF has some good points here. But let's kind of start at the beginning. The standard in question is NFPA 1971, the standard on protective ensembles for structural firefighting and proximity firefighting. So it's basically the standard on our turnout gear. Historically, one of the problems that we've had since we started really improving PPE back in the 80s and 90s, but one of the problems that we've had is that the moisture barrier, which keeps steam from you when you're in a hot environment, but also should breathe
Let it
so
out,
that you're not right. So you're thinking in nature of Gore-Tex here, but so a very important layer there, but it was degrading and to the point where I know in Providence, and I was the safety officer at the time, and literally gear that's 2 or 3 years old, the outer shell was okay, the liner thermal barrier was fine, but we were having breakdowns on the moisture barrier, and as a result, the whole turnout gear basically had to be replaced 2 or 3 years in. So there was a concern. I think they knew that nationally, so they knew that they needed to make the moisture barrier more robust, capable of withstanding more of whatever was causing the degradation. In the process, they ended up adding in this ultraviolet light degradation test. Now, I have no idea what UV light has to do with moisture barriers, and I'm a lawyer. I've got a degree in biology, and I've studied a little psychology, but you know, I don't know, you got to be a chemist or whatever,
Right.
chemical engineer on this one, but why in God's name there was an ultraviolet light test? And then, so that's number one. Why was there an ultraviolet light test? Okay, now, mind you, the outer layer, which is exposed to ultraviolet light, doesn't have that test. And the thermal barrier isn't. It's just the sandwiched moisture barrier that is. So the question number one in my mind is, why is there even an ultraviolet light test? Question number two is that test could be for 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, could be 100 hours. They picked 40 hours with very little explanation for why they picked 40 hours. But the only way that a moisture barrier can pass is you've got to be using this PFAS product. That's the only way they can get the moisture barriers to pass. So in other words, this particular section, if you take a look at the blog on it, we're dealing with NFPA 1971 section number 8.62. That requirement essentially requires PFAS containing material in turnout gear. If you eliminate that section, it's gone. Yeah, and there's other products that they can put in there. They can put in Gore-Tex or other Cross-Tex, all these other types of products. But with that section 6.82 in there, 8.62, there's no choice. So what the IAFF did when a lot of the revelations have been coming out about the harm that PFAS has been causing, the IAFF went to the NFPA and through a normal regular process that happens, it's called seeking a tentative interim amendment. They asked the NFPA to take this out. Okay, now this is the largest organization of firefighters in the world, and certainly the beneficiary, probably the largest beneficiary from the NFPA standards. And they're asking the NFPA to back off this particular one. And the NFPA, for whatever reason, through the committee process, said, no, we're not going to.
Well, I think the reason they claimed is they're in cahoots with the manufacturers of this
you know,
gear,
and again,
but
those are allegations. And you know, one of the things, I'm on one of the NFPA committees. I'm on the staffing NFPA 1710, and you know, there's people on the committees that work in the industry. And you can say, well, they shouldn't be on the committee, but they're the people that have the expertise.
Right.
You know, and when it comes to PPE, the people who have the expertise, by and large, are folks that work in the industry, that they understand textiles, they understand what happens when you bond this product to that product, and they understand the normal testing processes and everything. And again, we can say that the manufacturers should not be involved in the process, but I got to tell you, this test, I don't think that it increases the income of a manufacturer, because whether they sell you product A or product B, right, they're not going to make any more money. And certainly the person on the committee isn't going to make any more money. They're there. Yes, they may financially benefit, you know, in the big picture from selling turnout gear, but they're not going to make more. Like if this was enacted, in my thoughts on this, if this was enacted and the thermal barrier for turnout gear adds $30 to the cost of the turnout gear, and going to this other, the newer thermal barrier, the one that doesn't have to meet this, is $20. Well, then, you know what? The cost of turnout gear is going to go down $10. They're not making more money.
But the reversed argument is really the thought, right? That you're putting a carcinogenic chemical, whatever.
And no doubt, the PFAS should not be in there. And my question is, why was that UV light test even in the standard to begin with? What function, how does a UV light test relate to the degradation of the moisture barrier? And the NFPA, you know, and I know as a former manager there, we take it seriously that there needs to be science behind the standards. You can't just, you know, make up something. And I would like to see an explanation for how the UV light degradation test applied to the moisture barrier makes sense. Is there science behind it? And if so, then why doesn't the exterior and the thermal barrier have to undergo the test if it's such a good test, if it is a good test? But I mean, there's no way that the moisture barrier is going to be exposed to ultraviolet light. You'd have to take your gear apart and then shine a light on it. It's crazy.
So you're focusing on the practical. I want to focus on the legal and what's going to happen from here.
Okay.
So here's the interesting thing on the legal side. First, let's focus what they ask for. They're asking for two things: monetary damages, which they're never going to get, and a declaration to stop this. They want injunctive relief, meaning they want the court to say this is dangerous, you can't use it. Now, here's two huge problems, right? And I got to think how to keep my mind straight on both of these. Let's start with the declaratory relief. Are they going to stop manufacturing with the PFAS? And are they going to be ordered, because they didn't ask for this, because I would have, to replace all turnout gear? Well, you can't ask the NFPA to replace all turnout gear, right? They want them to change the standard. I'm curious, in some sense, why haven't they sued the manufacturers who are making this? They must be making the assumption, well, we adhere to an NFPA standard. I don't know if that's 100% going to save you if you knew the standard was dangerous, right? Come on, who didn't know at least recently in the last few years that PFAS is dangerous? I don't know how long before now, but we sure as heck have known for the last few years. So one of the things I think is they may get declaratory relief. And I'll tell you why I think they do. Nobody would pick up on this, but the practitioner side, it's important. They identify themselves as the IAFF as an unincorporated association. The unincorporated association stands like an individual citizen for the purpose of having jurisdiction. Now, this gets way too confusing. I won't get into it, but you're not getting damages because you have none. The IAFF, even as a citizen, right, doesn't have cancer. The IAFF didn't buy turnout gear. The IAFF had no other choice, right? Someone has to have turnout gear. Unless they say there's turnout gear without PFAS and we pointed them, we were duped, we pointed everybody to but the IFS has no real damages. So I don't think they are going to be able to prove, and I'm betting there's going to be a motion to dismiss coming, getting rid of them at least as the damages. Right? Yeah. But I think the declaratory relief stands. Now follow what happens from here. What should be happening is any person with cancer, which could in any way be traced to PFAS. And we know there are tens of thousands of those, at least, just looking at the class, the foam issue, right? How many lawsuits are there? This is going to be a repeat of that. I didn't know PFAS was in the standard. I didn't know it was in the gear. And as soon as the plaintiff's lawyers are done watching look, we could probably retire on this if we wanted to get every firefighter who had cancer that in any way was affected by turnout gear in a fire. Of course, right? I mean, we could sign up hundreds of thousands. So I think you're going to see a true class action by somebody as soon as they watch the blog or see this case. And there are going to be thousands, tens of thousands of lawsuits by firms, class action lawsuits against the manufacturers, not against NFPA. I think the manufacturers. I don't think you get to escape liability by putting a known harmful chemical into gear just because you said we're just following the standard. That's a Nuremberg defense, right?
Another thing, the standard does not say you have to use PFAS. The standard says you have to pass the UV light degradation test. The manufacturers choose, according to the manufacturers, the only way that they can satisfy that is by using PFAS containing products.
And say we can't meet that test.
So you can't say the NFPA mandates it, but it's kind of like one step removed. The NFPA mandates that you pass this test. The only way to pass the test is to have a PFAS containing product. So
except now, right? They argue there are ways to pass the test other than to have compliant gear, right?
well, there's ways to have safe gear.
Safe gear, right.
I think that's probably the better. There's no, according to what I understand, there's no way to get gear that will pass that test that doesn't have PFAS in the moisture barrier. And that's another thing too. And I know people freak out about PFAS in their turnout gear. Some people do, and they freak out about a lot of different things. And yet they go to fires and they're standing outside breathing in smoke.
Or they're standing inside doing overhaul.
They're standing next, right. They're standing next to the exhaust of a diesel, having a conversation with somebody.
Right.
They're breathing that in. And there's a huge difference in terms of your level of exposure when you're breathing something in and you're taking it into your body as opposed to having it against your skin. It's not even on the same magnitude. We're talking about exponential magnitudes. And if we're serious, and I'm saying we should be serious about cancer, we should be drop dead serious about cancer, okay? But let's make sure that we're emphasizing the things that we need to be emphasizing. And if you wanna manage this risk, stop breathing in smoke and wear your pack and do what you can even outside the building to not be exposed to this.
There was this, you got to remind me of the guy's name. There's this guy who did this study on HCN meters and hydrogen cyanide, and he realized that it's hydrogen cyanide, not necessarily heart attacks, are killing people. What was that guy's name again?
Somebody, I don't know.
Curt Verone, I think was the name. But it's the same thing. We bring in carbon monoxide detectors to a roof where we're standing next to the burning couch. We're like, oh, well, there's lots of ventilation in here. Who cares? You're nuts. Of course, we don't take this serious enough. But let me, because I don't want to miss this. If I'm quoted on one thing, I want to say this. This is a phenomenal, important lawsuit for one reason. It is going to bring national attention to this issue. It is going to send shockwaves through every manufacturer. It is going to show that this cannot continue and that immediately all gear needs to be replaced, recalled, etc. The question is going to be, who's going to bear that cost? The manufacturers, the municipalities, the fire departments, right? I mean,
well, it's got to start with the change in the standard. Okay. And I go back to my first point here is that what function does that ultraviolet light degradation test serve? It may have been well-intentioned. I'm not buying the conspiracy to make more money for the manufacturers. That's a lot of nonsense. Okay. They're not going to make any more or less. They're going to make whatever the cost of the material is, whether it's Gore-Tex or this super PFAS Gore-Tex, whatever it is. But let's figure out, is that a valid test? If not, let's get rid of it. And I think from the NFPA's perspective, they got to say, how did this get in there in the first place? And let's prevent this from happening again, that we're going to have idiotic requirements in our standards that have no scientific basis, that we've got to do better. Now, I'm making an assumption here that there is no legitimate reason. There may very well be somebody with a PhD in chemical engineering that says, oh, this is why that UV light test is a smart thing.
And maybe they say PFAS doesn't break down like the IAFF says and presents no risk in.
Well, maybe there's another way to pass if this ultraviolet light test is indeed necessary. Maybe it is. If it is indeed necessary, we've got to come up with an alternative product that can pass it.
Assuming again, and I'll assume, but assuming again that the PFAS in the turnout gear and the way it's exposed to heat, moisture, light, etc., assuming only for the moment that it's an actual danger. Right. But this to me seems like asbestos. Well, asbestos is fine, just don't touch it. Just don't cause it to go in the air. Asbestos in your house is great until you touch it. Well, we still made asbestos illegal and gazillions of class actions about it, right? So I look at it the same way. Don't put it in my gear, and sure as hell don't put it on my body. But kudos to the IAFF. Honestly, beyond anything, kudos to the IAFF for hitting this issue with a sledgehammer. It is going to send, if it doesn't send shockwaves, I'll be shocked, but it's going to send shockwaves throughout the entire industry. We are going to be talking about this for years. We're going to be talking about who bears the burden to replace this stuff. Wait till the firefighters unions and volunteers aside should say, we're not wearing this gear. Get us something new immediately. And who's going to afford it? Right? Somebody's going to have to pay the bill. And so who is wrong? And this is going to bankrupt somebody.
You know, you just raised a point that I hadn't thought of. And
well, that's good. I'll feel smart.
No, but no, think about this. Think about this. The allegations, and, you know, everybody's chirping about this lawsuit. You know, oh, this is ridiculous. They're all in cahoots. They're all in cahoots. Or, well, you know, fine. They're all in cahoots. The manufacturers are in cahoots to keep the standard the way it is. If they eliminated that 8.62, and I hadn't thought about this, so you mentioned that. If right now the NFPA says we're getting rid of 8.62, who benefits? Who's going to sell a shitload of turnout gear?
Right, the manufacturers.
The manufacturers, this would be a bonanza for the manufacturers. All they got to do is get rid of that. So if they weren't indeed in cahoots with the NFPA, why wouldn't they say, yeah, get rid of it? Now we're going to send, there's somewhere around 1.2 million firefighters in the United States. Okay, that's 1.2 million sets of turnout gear that have to be replaced.
Or maybe times two, because replacement gear, or you have backup set of gear.
Exactly.
Who
So again, if they truly were trying to profit from this, the smartest thing for them to have done would have been say, hey, get rid of 8.62.
Yeah, you know, and you know who else is coming right behind this? Everyone who cleans the gear.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone who disposes of the gear. How do we dispose of turnout gear? Are we burning it? Because if we're burning PFAS, we have another issue. Are we sticking in a landfill?
Send it to Ohio. Send it to
Ohio.
right.
Send it to Jeff. I mean, the ramifications from this are just occurring to us are staggering, because where is turnout gear? I got to tell you, I know a lot of places turnout gear is, and it's in places you don't want it. And I don't mean just the landfills. I mean, we've given turnout gear to other people to wear. We've turned it into duffel bags. We've turned it into decorations, and this is going to have long-term ramifications. I don't think the NFPA ends up paying anything in this, but I do think somebody is going to cost a lot of money, be paying a lot of money, and as you said, perhaps making a lot of money.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so let me ask you one last question. Why didn't they sue Lion Apparel and all the other apparels that they say are non-parties to this suit? Why didn't they sue them?
I think for the same reason that they're not going to get damages, that the IAFF doesn't have standing to sue, that it has to be the individual that sues. The individual that's suffering the damage. So that was another legal aspect on this. I'm not sure. And I think there's a lot of symbolism in this lawsuit. I think the IAFF did the right thing. As much as I love the NFPA, I think the IAFF did the right thing here. I'm a little disappointed in the NFPA in that they didn't do something about this before. But I'm not sure that the suit is going to prevail. I think it's something that it needs to be addressed and addressed quickly.
Yeah. So kudos to everybody, and let's keep making fire gear and our fire world safer and free from cancer. And this is going to be going on for easily 5 more years. But I will predict in less than a year, we're going to see plaintiffs, lawyers on television, right, saying if you're any firefighter who ever wore turnout gear, meaning any firefighter, right, across the world, and you have any type of cancer, you should sign up with us. The lawsuits, and I don't know.
This firm's taken those cases already.
Oh,
this firm's this firm's already taken those cases. So
this is going to have big ramifications. I don't know that we can afford it. I don't know the municipalities can afford it. I definitely think you're going to see, lawsuits by municipalities or by the firefighters against their municipalities saying you have a duty to replace this gear once there is an alternative. And I don't know how we're ever going to be able to afford that. It shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I think I saw it in the complaint, or if not, I saw it in one of the posts about it. that the European gear, which is made to an ISO standard, doesn't have PFAS.
Oh,
Okay,
interesting.
so now I'm assuming, I don't know how it's built, and I have heard stories of firefighters. I've got some friends from France that are in Germany that are firefighters, but I've heard some stories about European firefighters going down to MIFRE, the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute, and going in the burn buildings, and they go running out screaming. Yeah, because their turnout gear doesn't have the thermal protection that ours does, and our guys are like, what happened? And the instructors start making fun of the European firefighters until they take their gear off, and they got 1st and 2nd degree burns through their turnout gear.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a difference, and that would change if we go to gear that it isn't quite as thermally protective. Then certainly, there have to be some tactical changes as well. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we've done everybody concerned some justice on talking about this issue, giving some perspectives about the issue. And, again, I think the damages portion will be dismissed, but the declaratory relief, I think IAFF does have standing on that regard to get some declaratory relief, but to what end, right? You can get the standard changed, but then what happens from there? So, but a good first step, and kudos to the IAFF for looking out. I agree with you. I think this is for the shock value, not to make the IAFF some money.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely not to make the IAFF money.
No, this is costing a ton in legal fees, no doubt.
Yeah.
So.